Hello everybody and welcome back to All Around Sports. I'm your host JJ Cinto, and in today's episode I'm going to be giving my 2023 MLB predictions. Cue the intro. As you guys may know, 2023 for the MLB season is right around the corner as opening day is on March 30th, and ahead of the day I want to give my predictions for the whole season, basically the standings, the regular season awards, and I will be giving my playoff predictions and my World Series champion as well. Midway through the season, I will look back at it probably around the trade deadline, so in July. But yeah, and then of course end of season I'll also be looking at it. But first, let's start off with my division standings predictions. So we'll start with the AL side first. AL East, I will start from 5-1. Fifth, I think the Red Sox are going to be fifth. I just don't think they're a good team, and they do have this hardest strength of schedule. They struggle in the bullpen. I don't think Kenley Jansen is any good of a closer anymore. But yeah, I think they're going to finish fifth. Fourth, I have the Baltimore Orioles. Yes, a bit of a surprise team, and they take a big leap in the rebuild this year. As I think Adley Rutschman comes alive this year and is a star. I think he will be an all-star this year, Adley Rutschman. I think he will be an insane player for this Baltimore Orioles ball club. Third, I have the Rays. I feel like they're just always going to be that third spot in the AL East. The pitching will lead them easily. I mean, pitching's always led the Tampa Bay Rays, if I'm being honest, but I think this year it will heavily be noticed, especially with Shane McClanahan, who I will talk about later. Second in the AL East, I have the New York Yankees. They will be a good wild card team, but the team just needs to stay healthy. I mean, you already have Carlos Rodon, who just signed that huge deal in the offseason. He's already on the IL, as well as Harrison Bader. This team, as long as they can stay healthy and Aaron Judge continues to hit home runs, they could finish first, but currently I have them finishing second. First, I have the Toronto Blue Jays. They need one more big bat to be a true contender in my eyes, but they're still a very solid team. Solid 1-5, good bullpen. I do like Jordan Romano. And they picked up Dalton Varsho. I think that was a big pickup for them in the Diamondbacks trade that they did during the offseason. I think they will finish first in the AL East and be AL East champions. Next, we move on to the AL Central, and in fifth, I have the Kansas City Royals. Honestly, 4 and 5, they could switch easily for me, but I think the Royals are just not good. They have no big bats, and you could possibly see a Brady Singer trade coming up at the trade deadline this year. I could definitely see that happening. And then fourth, I have the Detroit Tigers, only because they have young talent on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, you have Riley Green, who is, I think, going to be a big breakout player this year. You also have Spencer Torkelson, who has been hitting very solid in spring training this year for the Tigers, but pitching-wise, they do not have a good bullpen at all. And I just don't think they're a solid team. Third, I have the Twins. I'm expecting injuries, and their bullpen isn't that good outside of Jarren Duran, who is very good, but he can't take up that whole bullpen whenever he has to pitch the ninth inning anytime they're winning. Of course, you do have Carlos Correa coming back to the Twins after that chaotic offseason that he had, going from like 3 different teams, it felt like, but he ended up in Minnesota. I'm just expecting a lot of injuries here. This team is riddled with injury-prone players like Max Kepler and, of course, Byron Buxton. If Byron Buxton can stay healthy, this Twins team can be insane, in my opinion. Second, I have the White Sox. This team, blew up a couple years ago, and they were, the next big team. And then after that year, it hasn't looked that bright in Chicago. I mean, they need another star player. And when Elvis Andrus is starting on your team, you're not a contender. You're barely a playoff team at that point, in my eyes. I just don't think the White Sox are that good. I think they need a more consistent bullpen, more experience out of their young players. I think the White Sox still need a couple more years to be a true contender. Or just another star player with that talent, especially losing Jose Abreu, who, yes, he will be filled, but losing Jose Abreu is a huge loss for this White Sox team. Next, we have the Cleveland Guardians, who I think will finish first. Jose Ramirez is going to be amazing this year, especially after signing that extension. You also have Andres Jimenez. I think Jose Ramirez is going to prove yet again why he is one of the most underrated players. And I also think Tristan McKenzie is a dark horse for the Cy Young pick. Yes, he did just get onto the IL with a back strain, which will keep him out for a minimum of 8 weeks. But I think Tristan McKenzie is seriously a dark horse Cy Young pick and he is my dark horse Cy Young pick. Moving to the AL West. Fifth, I have the Oakland A's. I think they will be the second worst team. The worst team is going to be on the NL side. I think the A's are just so bad. I mean, I can't name any players on their team besides Seth Brown and Ramon Laureano off the top of my head. I mean, yeah, I really can't. I can't name any players on this team. They are very bad. I think they just picked up Juris Familia. That might not be true. I'll have to double check, but they might have picked him up. So the A's are just a really bad team. Fourth, I have the Rangers. I think they're one more year away or so from being a playoff team. I mean, this team could definitely sneak into the playoffs somehow if everything goes right and they have Corey Seager and Marcus Semien playing at an MVP level. Jacob deGrom pitches a whole year and pitches under a 2 ERA. I mean, they just need deGrom to stay healthy, and I think you're going to see pitchers potentially coming up like Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, potentially coming up this year and filling up that 4 and 5 spot. And if you do, you have a solid 1 to 5 with Jacob deGrom, Nate Eovaldi, John Gray, Martin Perez potentially being in there, Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter. One of those two could switch in at that 5 spot, whoever's ready. But this Rangers team has a lot going on, and if they can fix the bullpen, this team is for sure a playoff team. And I think you could see them trading for potentially bullpen arms at the trade deadline and get some of this talent that has become a loaded farm system here in Texas. You could see some of their younger prospects going to different teams for that bullpen arm. Third, I have the Los Angeles Angels. I think they definitely could be a number 2 team in the West this year. I mean, going to have to see how that bullpen performs this year. But, I mean, when you have the number 1 and number 2 players in the MLB in Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout, you should be a playoff team. It's really sad to see that they're not a playoff team with the number 1 and number 2 players in the whole world. Literally in the world, in my opinion. Second, you have the Seattle Mariners. I think this team could surprise the AL and win the West, but I don't know. It rides on the team having consistency and Julio Rodriguez playing at an MVP level. I think he will be a superstar this year, and he will break out as one of the bigger names in the MLB. But I don't think he'll play at the MVP level like he could, but he could. You never know. And winning the AL West, the defending World Series champions, the Houston Astros, they'll be amazing yet again this year. Yes, losing Justin Verlander is a bit of a tough pill to swallow, but when you're the Astros, you just have bullpen arms that just move to the starting rotation and just people down in the farm system just rising through the ranks to become the next number 1 there. I also think this is a really rogue shout, but I think Christian Javier could potentially win the Cy Young this year. I think he's going to have an amazing year. His pitches are disgusting. He could be an opener for them. He could also go 9 innings and pitch a complete game. Like, his stamina is insane, and his effectiveness throughout the game does not matter whether he starts the game, whether he comes in relief, whether he's closing the game. He will give you 100%, throw the filthiest pitches while he's out there, and he will have great outings no matter what. I think Christian Javier could potentially win Cy Young. Now, moving to the NL East, we'll start with the 5th team, the Nationals. Simple enough, they're young and rebuilding. Nobody has any expectations for this team. If they finish 4th, that'll be an accomplishment for them. Speaking of 4th, I had the Marlins. I mean, they're not good offensively. They have a bunch of second basemen, it feels like, playing on that team. Sandy Alcantara, probably going to have another great, amazing year. I wish they had a better catcher than Jacob Stallings, but Jacob Stallings was a solid catcher in Pittsburgh, so maybe he just needed that 1 year to get acclimated to the scenery, and we'll see how he performs this year. But I think the Marlins could potentially trade for some bigger bats, maybe some bullpen arms. Never know. Third, I have the Phillies. I think the Bryce Harper injury is huge, as well as they just lost Rhys Hoskins for, I think, the whole year. Yeah, he tore his ACL, so he most likely is not going to come back. Bryce Harper will, of course, come back, but I don't think this offense can pull through with just Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber. I think they need more. I mean, you do have a still solid 1-2 with Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. I think Zach Wheeler could potentially be a Cy Young candidate. Aaron Nola looked great during the playoffs last year. But I have the Phillies finishing third, and I do have them making the playoffs in a wild card spot. Overall, a solid lineup will get them through to the playoffs. Second, I have the Mets. Honestly, this division is interchangeable from 1 to 3, depending on who's hot and who's cold throughout the year. But I'm going to go with the Mets here at second because I will not give this team credit until they prove that they can win games in the postseason. They're for sure a wild card team, though, but the Mets, I picked them to win the World Series last year, and they lost in the wild card. It really made me look like a fool then. Really made me and a bunch of people honestly look like a fool. But first, the Atlanta Braves. Their bullpen is loaded and their lineup is still amazing. All that they need is a healthy year from Ronald Acuna. If Ronald Acuna is healthy on the NL, he has a very strong chance to win this year's MVP. I think this year is one of his better years to possibly win it. When you have there's a lot of star players on the NL side that are injured this year or could be tired heading into the season with the World Baseball Classic that just happened. And he didn't play too much. Honestly, I can't recall if he played at all. But if he did, he played for Venezuela. And I know they weren't too deep into the World Baseball Classic, so he'll probably be the most prepared and seeing a lot more MLB pitching in the spring training. But I think if he's healthy, he's this year's MVP. But I'll say that for later in the episode, who I actually think will be the NL MVP. Heading into the NL Central, we'll start out with last. I have the Cincinnati Reds. The team is super bad, but has potential with young pitching such as Hunter Green and, of course, Nick Lodolo, who some players have said is the nastiest pitcher in all of MLB. Very interesting to hear that from some MLB players, but he is a great pitcher. But they just need better bats and potentially some younger players coming up from the farm system, such as Eddie De La Cruz, who is in the top 100 MLB pipeline players. Sorry. Fourth, I have the Pittsburgh Pirates. They're a young team with young electric bats. They just need pitchers to be solid enough, and this team could win a couple games. Of course, you have O'Neal Cruz and Ke'Bryan Hayes, two young stars of the game coming up through the system. They just need some better pitching, honestly. That's all it comes down to. Third, I have the Cubs, but I would not be surprised if they finish second. This Cubs team is literally a couple players away from being a very solid team. They just need to bring in a couple solid bats to help the lineup get better. I really do like the addition of Dansby Swanson at shortstop. They've been missing that star shortstop for a really, really long time. Literally since Addison Russell. Yeah, that was a really long time ago. That's the last great shortstop. In my opinion, of course, Addison Russell was only good he wasn't really that good, but he was solid enough to fill that position and win them a World Series. And I can't recall many great shortstops. I mean, you have Nico Horner, but I don't view him as a shortstop. I view him more as a second baseman. But yeah. Second, you have the Cardinals. They are an older team, and Wainwright, I think last year was his last great year. They really haven't made any big additions. It's really the same team as it was a year ago. They're kind of just hoping for the same level of production. And it's hard whenever you have old aging players, especially in the rotation. They do have Ryan Helsley back another year at closer. Have a solid bullpen. Bullpen's always going to be solid in St. Louis, to be honest with you, but it's just the rotation and a couple bats that they could use to fill. I mean, Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, last year's reigning NL MVP, is still there. I think he will be solid, but it's just a tough way to gauge how the Cardinals will be this year. And, of course, I have the NL Central winners being the Brewers. I mean, when you have the 1-2-3 still of Corbin Burns, Woodruff, and Peralta. Sorry, excuse that. In my opinion, that's the best 1-2-3 in the league in terms of starting rotation. I just think that you can't beat that. That is an insane 1-2-3. Moving on to the NL West. Fifth, I have the Rockies, who I think will be the worst team in baseball this year. And you could definitely see a Chris Bryant trade. I genuinely forgot that Chris Bryant played on this Colorado Rockies team. I don't know why he chose to be in Colorado. It's a really bad, really bad organization. He needs to get out of there if he genuinely wants to play for anything meaningful in his career, I would advise every star level player to not ever go to Colorado. That is where pitchers go to die, and honestly, hitters. If you aren't 6'4", 250 and can just hit bombs. Like CJ Cron. CJ Cron is one of the players that will thrive playing in Colorado. But, I mean, put him anywhere else, he's not a top player in my eyes, or a top first baseman. Fourth, I have the Giants. I don't think Gabe Kapler is a really good manager. And I think first year, great year for the Giants. Second year, this year I think it's going to go even worse. I mean, they're relying on so many veterans. And that is a team I struggle to support whenever you don't have any like young star players. Like, it's hard to support a team that's literally just full of veterans. Especially with players that are wildly inconsistent like Joey Bart, Jock Peterson, Brandon Crawford, who came alive 2 years ago, but last year went back to the bad, awful Brandon Crawford, old. It's just hard to support them. And then third, I think this team is going to be a real surprise team for a lot of people. I have the Arizona Diamondbacks. They got so much back in the Dalton Varsho trade with Gabriel Marino, Lourdes Gurriel, and they have a solid young outfield. They picked up Kyle Lewis, who has shown great potential in the past. They still have Zach Gowen in the rotation. If they picked up a couple more arms, this team could seriously make a push for the playoffs. I could genuinely see them potentially sneaking into that last wild card spot. They do need a little help. They need some teams to do really, really badly this year, such as the number 2 team in the West, and I'm picking the LA Dodgers. The Stars are slowly leaving from LA, and I believe they will be a wild card team this year, but I genuinely would not be surprised if they missed out. Their lineup looks like a shell of itself, and their bullpen will most likely be good, but I think you could see Julio Urias actually winning the the Cy Young. He pitched amazing, but this Dodgers team is really going to struggle, I think, this year. First, I have the San Diego Padres. They look really good for this upcoming year. They have, in my opinion, the best lineup in the league, 1 to 9. I mean, their weakest spot is the DH with Matt Carpenter or Nelson Cruz, who are great whenever you put them against left-handed pitching or right-handed pitching. Of course, Matt Carpenter, much better against right-handed pitching. Nelson Cruz, better against left-handed pitching. They have a solid rotation. Joe Musgrove will come back from injury this year, but I think the Padres are your NL West champions at the end of the year. Now, moving on to the regular season awards. We'll start off with the AL. I don't really have one. I mean, it's a mix between Vladimir Guerrero Jr., or Shohei Ohtani. I'll go with Shohei Ohtani. And then the NL, I think it's Trey Turner's year. Could have definitely won it last year. This year, I think it is Trey Turner's year. With Bryce Harper being injured, with so many NL superstars that are constantly injury prone, and the fact that he is playing 160 games year in and year out, hitting a 300 average, stealing 30-plus bags a year, hitting upwards of 20-plus home runs with 80-plus RBIs, being a leadoff man or 9-hole. Anywhere you put him in the lineup, he will thrive. Especially in this World Baseball Classic, he is broken out as a superstar in the MLB, hitting the most home runs in the World Baseball Classic ever. I think Trey Turner is on pace for this year to have an insane year. Now for the Cy Young, I'm going to start with the NL because it's a little bit simpler. I think it's going to be Julio Urias. I mean, he had an insane year a year ago, had a 2.16 ERA. Insane year, could have definitely won it. But I think this is the year for Julio Urias, especially pitching so well for Team Mexico. Unfortunately, of course, they lost in the semifinals to Japan, but great year for Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. Now for the AL, I think it will be DeGrom if he's healthy. That's the only case that I would pick Jacob DeGrom, but I struggle to do that. And I was going to pick Tristan McKenzie, but he just got put onto the IL and will miss at least 8 weeks with a back strain. So instead, I will choose, if you remember what I said earlier in the video, don't forget this man's name, Shane McClanahan of the Tampa Bay Rays. Pitched an insane year a year ago. I've been seeing him in spring training. His pitching has looked even filthier coming off the left side in Tampa Bay, where they just farm great pitching and make Cy Young pitchers in Tampa Bay. I think this could be Shane McClanahan's year. He had a great year last year, having a sub-3 ERA, striking out a ton of batters. I mean, Shane McClanahan is just a dirty pitcher. Now, for Rookie of the Year, I'm going to say in the AL, this is kind of a little bit of Ranger bias, but I think it will be Josh Jung. I mean, Josh Jung has looked insane in spring training, hitting home runs, hitting for average, playing solid defense. His injury, his torn labrum, he looks like he is healed completely from it. He looks amazing. I am really looking forward to seeing him play this year in Ranger Stadium, Globe Life Park. Now, for the NL, I have Corbin Carroll, who is the heavy favorite to win Rookie of the Year in the NL. I think he will be a big reason that the Diamondbacks have an insane year this year. I mean, he is a star in the making there in Arizona. Now, Manager of the Year, I think in the AL it will go to Dusty Baker after he leads the Astros to the number 1 seed in the AL. I mean, you just have to give it to him at that point. He didn't win it last year. He needs to win it this year. And now for the NL, I have Torey Lovullo. Now, it is interesting because I don't have them making the playoffs. But when you go from a team like the Diamondbacks a year ago that were really not good, bad team, and you put them to 3rd in the West, and I could see them seriously potentially make the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, I think he is the Manager of the Year without a doubt. Even if they don't, though, I still have him being the Manager of the Year. I just really, really enjoy watching Torey Lovullo be a manager. I think he's criminally underrated. I think he's a very solid manager. Now, we'll move on to the playoffs. And I'll do the AL side first. I'll do the AL completely, NL completely, and then the 2 teams for the World Series. AL side, I have the 3 seed Guardians versus the 6 seed Tampa Bay Rays. And I have the Cleveland Guardians moving on to the ALDS. Then you have the Yankees versus the Mariners. And I have the Yankees defeating the Mariners, the 4 seed Yankees beating the 5 seed Mariners to move on to the ALDS. And next you have the 3 seed Guardians to play the 2 seed Blue Jays. I have the Guardians winning. I have the Guardians moving on to the ALCS. And I have them facing the Houston Astros, who knock off the New York Yankees. I think the Astros are just too good of a team. I think they're pitching down the stretch. They just have so many arms that they could throw out at any point. And their lineup is so consistently good from 1 to 9, especially adding Jose Abreu, who filled in their worst position, in my opinion, at first base. I mean, they still got Yuli Gurriel. But, I mean, Jose Abreu is just a lot better, I think, and more consistent. Now, in the ALCS, you have the 3 seed Guardians versus the 1 seed Houston Astros. And moving on to the World Series, I have the Cleveland Guardians. I have your AL champs being the Cleveland Guardians and going on to the World Series for this year. I just have so much faith in this Cleveland Guardians team. Their pitching is so good. I think Tristan McKenzie will potentially be the Cy Young if he comes back, looks healthy after the back strain, if he pitches healthy. I think he could seriously be the Cy Young, even with that injury missing the first 2 months. Now, for the NL side, we'll start off with the wild card. I have the 3 seed Brewers taking on the 6 seed Phillies. And I have an upset. I have the Phillies knocking off the Milwaukee Brewers. I think that would be a great series to watch. And I think the Phillies, especially getting some players back like Bryce Harper, having that, they're a team made for the playoffs. They really are. With the momentum that they can get out of Kyle Schwarber, the pitching that they can get from Aaron Nola, Zach Wheeler. Yeah, that's all I can really think of right now. But they are a very, very solid playoff team. Now, for the next matchup, I have the Mets versus the Dodgers, and I have the New York Mets. I know I was kind of giving them slack, but I don't think the Dodgers are very good this year, so I could definitely see them losing in the first round of the playoffs. Next in the NLDS, we have the Phillies, 6 seed Phillies versus the 2 seed Padres, and I have the Phillies moving on to the NLCS. I think the Phillies, like I said, are a great playoff team. And I will have them facing the New York Mets, who defeat the Atlanta Braves in the NLDS, knocking off the 1 seed. So my NLCS matchup is the 6 seed Phillies versus the 4 seed Mets. And I have the New York Mets going to the World Series to face off against the Cleveland Guardians this upcoming year, 2023 year. I have the World Series matchup being the Cleveland Guardians versus the New York Mets. And I have winning it in 6 games. I had the Cleveland Guardians being your World Series champions and your World Series MVP being Jose Ramirez. Sorry for that, but if you have any comments or questions or anything you want to talk trash about me in the comment section, do so. I genuinely want to hear y'all's opinions on this. I mean, it's my predictions at the beginning of the year. Anything could happen. For all we know, freaking Christian Walker could be the NL MVP and the AL MVP could be Adley Rutschman. Who knows? Who genuinely knows? The AL MVP could be Jacob deGrom because he pitches with a sub 1.5 ERA. Blows everybody out of the mind. But that'll be it for this episode. It's been All Around Sports. I'm your host, Jacinto, and I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.